Occasionally we get calls from people thinking that they have a clogged drain vent or something like that, either because their toilet's not working right or maybe some gurgling's occurring or something like that. And they looked online and found that that's a potential problem or a potential issue causing that issue. I will tell you this, in 25 years of plumbing, I've run into 3 clogged vents. One was actually causing an issue on the drainage, and it was on a septic system, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. The others were not causing an issue on the drainage. They were causing an issue on siphoning the P-traps out downstream of that particular fixture where the venting was connected. A drain vent, its main purpose is to prevent from a P-trap being siphoned out. That's the main principle behind them. The other benefit or other purpose is to equalize the pressure within the drain system and to allow the sewer gases to escape to the atmosphere. That's it. A common analogy that plumbers, and I was taught this too, and believed it for a long time until a plumber smarter than me was able to explain it to me, and it made a lot more sense once it clicked. But a common analogy that plumbers will tell other people or other plumbers when it comes to why we have drain vents, and they will put their finger over a straw, pull water up out of a cup, and open it and say, that's why, because it allows for the water to drain. Or they'll take a bottle of water, turn it upside down, undo the cap, and then poke a hole in the top and say, see how well that water drains now that I have venting on the top. What's the difference? A drain system without a vent is still not airtight, even if there is no vent. It is not like this. This is an airtight situation where you have air that is trapped in here that cannot allow air to come in. On a fixture here, where you have a sink right up above this, you have air up above that sink in the room that it's located in. It's not airtight. Water is not that dense to where it will stop from water draining elsewhere if you don't have a vent on it. It doesn't need air from some vent to be able to drain. It has air in the room. That's it. But what can happen is if you did not have a vent here, let's say this just drains straight into here, right, without any kind of vent up here, and you had water flowing down here. Let's say you're running a load of laundry and the pipe is full of water at that time, it's in the drain cycle at that time, and you had no vent. As that water passes by this connection, it can siphon this water out, thus rendering this P-trap useless and making it to where it no longer has enough water in it to prevent from sewer gases escaping. The other thing that can occur is if you fill this sink up with water, like if you're doing dishes, and again, we're assuming we have no vent, so it's just straight from P-trap into the drain. When you drain that sink out, when you have a full sink of water and you drain it out, it can siphon that water out of the trap as it goes, just like a toilet does. That's how toilets work. Toilets utilize what's called an S-trap, and that is why they have to refill after you flush them. The water comes in, doubling the capacity of the bowl, and that water siphons out through siphonic action and the common bond of that water pulling itself and all of that through the system and all of that. But it has to refill afterwards. So it doesn't need a vent. It has to have an S-trap to create that siphon to get all the waste to go out. But actually, according to the code, you don't have to have a vent anywhere near that toilet. It can be the maximum allowable length is indefinite. They don't have a measurement for that anymore. With the ICC code. Don't come at me about UPC and all the rest of it. I know that codes vary. What I'm saying is, according to International Code Council for plumbing, for residential plumbing, there is no maximum allowable distance between a toilet and a drain vent. And that's because it refills itself. But anyways, that's the main purpose. There's plenty of air in that room for that water to drain. You don't need it, except on septic systems. They're a little bit more important. Let's get into that. Real quick, I also wanted to mention that I have this wonderful little book here from 1910. It's called The Questions and Answers on the Theory and Practice of Sanitary Plumbing. And it's awesome. This is all on drainage and venting. Written in 1910. A friend of mine gave this to me from an estate sale they went to. And it's just a wonderful guide with all kinds of very valuable information regarding the plumbing industry and best practices and stuff like that. And as you can see, all the volumes that came out, and this one is from 1910. And much of this is still very relevant today. I have another book from 1907 from the same guy. It's from R.M. Starbuck, and I looked him up, and it looks like they had a company for a long time doing heating stoves and stuff like that back in the late 19th, early 20th century. But anyways, in here, one of the chapters on venting, it discusses what the purpose of a vent is. And it says it right here on back venting. Why should traps be back vented? And back venting is just nothing more than what I showed earlier, just a vent connected after the P-trap, back behind the P-trap. In order to prevent the siphonage of the trap seal principally, also to relieve the trap seal of pressure generated in the sewer or cesspool. That's it. They don't really assist in the actual drainage, again, except for septics. So let's get into that. So septic tanks, very rudimentary drawing here of a septic tank. Let's see, I'm going to set this up a little bit better here. Let's see, reflection on this is awful. There we go. Okay, so on a septic tank, you have water that comes in and the drain, or the sewage that comes in and sewage that goes out to the drain field. Okay, from your house to here, the water comes into this tank and the water will sit at that level. This is the pipe conveying the sewage. Okay, this is a T that sits inside of the tank where part of it dips down below the scum level. That's what this brown part is here. It's called the scum level. And then you have on the outlet side, it takes it. So it should be pretty much black water or not gray water on that side if everything is broken down and the bacteria has been doing its job. But the sewage comes into here and it allows it to flow in. And then as it breaks down, it flows out. But what can happen is this can get filled up or this can be a little bit off level. And that's oftentimes what we see is when a tank is set in the ground, a lot of times after the ground settles, the tank can actually go a little bit lower, or the pipe right here can become offset and cause it to where the water is actually up to here or so inside of that tank, inside of that pipe. And so basically it can actually cut off the inlet to where the water is actually up to, if I can get this, the water can actually get to the point where it's right up here and actually kind of blocking to where there's not a vent up here. Or if the lid is nice and airtight, this is a fairly airtight system sometimes. And that can happen. And when that happens, you definitely need to have a vent on that system in order for the water to drain, because you essentially are creating creating an air pocket, so to speak, air trap within the system between a P-trap and the tank, or a toilet in the tank, or whatever. And it will cause an airlock. That's what I was trying to say earlier. An airlock between the trap and there. If there was no vent, let's say, on the system after the P-trap, no vent at all, or if they had what's called an air admittance valve or an auto vent, which is commonly referred to the system in plumbing, that only allows air to come into the drain system and not out. Because what's happening is you're displacing water inside of this tank, right, as it fills up a little bit, or you're displacing water inside of the system when you add water to it, so that air has to escape. And if it can't escape through a vent, then it's gonna cause an airlock in the system, and that can cause sluggish or poor flow. And you have to have a vent coming up after the trap in order to allow that air to escape when it's being displaced inside of the tank. So, good airtight septic systems and aerobic systems, they do definitely require a vent in order to drain properly. And a lot of times, what will happen is people will see that they have an issue on the drain not working properly, and they'll add a vent and all of a sudden it starts draining. And if they're on a septic system, most of the time the issue was, they needed a vent. And you can get away with just one vent on that system. The rest of them can be those air admittance valves, but you do need one vent to allow that air to escape. But anyways, that's pretty much it on what vents do. That's all they do. When someone and a plumber tells you, you got to have a straw, it's just like a finger over straw, that's not the case, because drain systems are not airtight, and you have plenty of air in that room that the fixture is sitting. So hopefully that helps. I'll come back with another quick video on something else that can occur on venting, but this video is getting long enough and I want to talk about it. But yeah, it'll be on what happens when you have a belly in line and the symptoms that you'll see when you have that. So anyways, thank you guys for listening. Hope you have a good one.